flag
to the flag
of the United States
United
of
States
America,
America,
to the republic
to the
for which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
and which it
one
stands,
nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. There we go. I don't remember what I need to do.
Roll
Jennifer?
call.
we need to share the agenda on the screen. Here, I'll do that in just a second.
That's okay, I've got it. So we need to approve the minutes of the January 12th.
Well, I know that there's no members of the public.
Oh, is that
We
first?
probably should mention public comment.
Oh, yes, public comments. So we should wait a minute or two to make sure there's nobody. We don't see anybody right now.
No one's logged in, right?
No, it doesn't look like it. Jennifer, do you do roll call?
I do not. I'm sorry, I do not. That's usually the chair or vice chair that roll calls.
Oh, okay. Well, Sri Ram is not here. I'm here. Carol Collins, Tom Owen,
Here.
and I'm sorry, and Joe.
Joe Dennis here.
Yes.
Here.
We do not have our council member. That's what I was looking at. Okay. So we do have 3. And that's enough for a quorum.
Mhm.
Okay, public comments. We have nobody.
It
From the
does not
public.
appear that there's anybody here
Okay.
from the public.
Then let's move to approving the minutes of the January 12th meeting. Does anybody have any corrections?
No.
I do not.
Motion to approve.
Move to approve. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, the minutes are approved. Let's move to Chief McCauley. We've got the Middlefield Road speed limit.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. So if you recall, when we were talking about this came up at a recent council meeting. Councilmember Widmer was discussing maybe thinking possibly that the speed limit on Middlefield Road should be reduced to 25 to be consistent with what Menlo Park is doing. But Robert Ovadia, and that attachment was sent to you, found that Menlo Park is not reducing the speed limit to 25, nor do they have plans to do so. I also sent out probably a lot of mind-bending information. It's actually good information. You know, the actual traffic engineering study that we do every 5 years for the speed limit, our black box that we call it, record results, and then the collision history. And if you look at all that and digest it and crunch it together, you know, in my opinion, looking at it, is collision history for the collision history for the amount of miles driven, you know, is extremely low. We're particularly lucky, you know, fatalities and serious injuries almost non-existent. The speed limits are well within range of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And so based on that, I guess if I give my recommendation is to leave it at 30 miles an hour.
Then council members, any comments, I guess? I mean, committee members, excuse me. Oh, and we do have Thumpers here. Thank you.
Yeah, you do. Apologies for being late. I had the wrong Zoom information on my invite. I tracked it down. So Robert, you can ignore the phone call I gave you a second ago.
Does anybody else want to make comments on the speed limit, changing the speed limit on Middlefield Road?
I had a question for Chief. If I'm looking at the Middlefield Road statistical data PDF, didn't go through line by line, all 29 pages, but if I look at the first page, third section, would it be fair to say that the traffic count is roughly 11,000 cars per day? At least given the sample set of November 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, seems to be in that 11,000, 12,000 range. Is
Yeah,
that
I didn't particularly look at that. Probably sounds about right. I'm trying to pull it up now.
But if we were to look at the combined lane totals across those days and just average that number, would that be a fair representation of traffic count?
I would say so. And then when you look at the volume of traffic and the number, I forget, I don't have the email in front of you that I sent you that said, the average, in the last year, the average number of collisions per month was very low. The majority of those were, very minor, very minor injury, nothing serious. The majority were rear end collisions. And I think that might have been what prompted some of this. Is a lot of times in these instances, and Sergeant Metzger, our traffic sergeant, can chime in, the person cited for speed too fast for conditions, obviously it's really inattention. They're following too close. So it isn't like they're racing down Middlefield and colliding with other cars. That's the cite that they're given that the court supports.
Right.
Often, in reference to the primary collision factor, oftentimes people are distracted by their cell phones. But when you show up to the scene of a collision, 10 minutes after it's occurred, and were either of you on your cell phone? No, officer, of course not. We weren't on our cell phone. But I can tell you that oftentimes I will, in the evening commute, particularly, ride the motorcycle in the bicycle lane northbound on Middlefield from pretty much Oak Grove all the way to Marsh Road, where it could be backed up that entire length, and just I'll just pick off driver after driver after driver on their cell phone. So we all label these collisions the primary collision factor is driving too fast, but most times it's mostly inattention, due to their cell phones.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was looking, I appreciate that. And I was thinking just the volume of traffic that artery is trying to move from, one edge of our town to the other. If you think about folks getting on at Marsh or coming in off of the Middlefield north end of us and then taking it all the way through to Menlo Park, that we're moving a fairly significant quantity of vehicles.
That's true. And again, minus our time in COVID, and again, Marsh Road in the evenings can be backed up from Oak Grove all the way to Marsh Road, and then in reverse in the morning for the morning commute. It can be backed up from Ravenswood, Ringwood, all the way to Marsh Road and beyond, and actually all the way up to Jennings, our last street.
Yeah, and that's a self-limiting speed factor there.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Bill.
then certain times of the day when you can get up to 30 or more, if you're looking at putting it down to 25, I think you're going to further compound the traffic flow. And as I talk with Mr. Roderickson, you're kind of putting us in a position to go out and do some enforcement. First off, legally, it wouldn't be supported if we're bringing it down to 25 because of the recent speed studies. But you're kind of putting us in a hard spot too when, in reality, it should stay at 30 to be consistent with the throughfare through Middlefield as well.
And the radar survey, if we wanted to lower it, we'd have to perform a new radar survey. And I don't think there's any way that somebody would come out here or come out to, to town and survey that street for speed and come up with a recommended speed of 25, even with our schools and other, areas of limitations in that area. But we're not going to get a recommended speed for 25. And so we're not going to be able to enforce anything anyway at a speed limit below the critical speed, which I think out there is upwards of 36, 37 miles per hour for both directions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Chief, could you? I'm sorry, but Chief, could you just explain to me why didn't Menlo Park come in at 35 miles an hour? Are we consistent with Menlo Park, or is there something different in the way it's laid out in Middlefield?
It's pretty consistent. I mean, it's right in there, maybe a couple miles an hour. That really, that really wouldn't be much of a data point to consider. I think it's right in there with ours.
But what's the current speed limit in Menlo Park and in Atherton along Middlefield Road?
30.
No, well, Menlo Park, where I have the staff.
The memo looks like it's 35 in Menlo
I think
Park,
it's
doesn't it?
35.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a quick look at.
It's all 2 lanes there too, or 4 lanes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it starts at, what is it? Ravenswood, Ringwood, Ravenswood.
Yeah.
and then opens up to 2 lanes each direction. Granted, on the northbound side, it's a turn lane between Ravenswood and Ringwood, but then it's 2 lanes down to Willow, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Menlo Park from Ringwood to Willow is 35.
And the reason I went there is I think that's where Bill Widmer, Councilmember Widmer's concerns, not concerns, but issues came up, is he was saying, gosh, Menlo Park is slowing theirs down, we should slow ours down. I think was his information. It was turned out to be incorrect. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we were talking about that before he came on. I think
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's kind of what Bill thought, and then we were able to find out that no, they're not going to be doing that.
Okay. I think that's what prompted a lot of the questions out of the council was just that issue.
No, I think you're right.
Oh, here you go. So I was looking for the attached online, and I think it was distributed as well, is the speed limit information for Menlo Park. And as the chief indicated, the speed limit for Menlo Park on Middlefield Road is 35 miles an hour from city limit to city limit.
Yes.
That's correct.
Do we have any more questions for staff or comments? Do we want to, I guess then this is something we should take a vote on? Recommendation?
Yeah, I think we vote on our recommendation, right?
Okay. Would anybody like to?
The proposal, I'll propose we do not change the speed limit on Middlefield Road.
I can second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I didn't see you, Joe. You must have responded.
I said aye, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Don't get to see everybody at once. Okay. I think we are done with that one. We can move on to the Middlefield Road, Oak Grove intersection, right turn restrictions. That was something I had brought up.
Yeah, and I was able to. I'll let Sergeant Metzger take this because he provided. I asked him for the history. He provided that, which I sent out to you. If you want to go ahead and take that one, David.
Sure. I can just. Would you like me to go over a brief history of what I'm familiar with for the intersection?
that'd be great.
So when I started 26 years ago, there were 2 signs posted, 2 small signs posted just for Oak Grove, and it's for to limit the right turn from Oak Grove onto Middlefield for both eastbound and westbound traffic. And it was no right turn on red from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sometime maybe around, and then that was when I started in 1994. Sometime around 96, 97, I think due to the growing population at the high school, at Menlo High School, there was a decision made to restrict all 4 corners of the intersection to no right turn on red Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And again, they replaced them with 2 signs per corner, much larger signs. That remained the norm, and I'd worked that intersection a number of times, probably written hundreds of tickets at that intersection. That remained the norm and what seemed to be average and appropriate for me for a number of years until about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, when we changed the signage for all 4 corners again for no right turn on red from 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. and then 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. So there was those 2 portions, Monday through Friday. There were those 2 portions of the day where the right turn was restricted, and it seemed to try and correspond with the hours of the school. However, the population of the school coming in and out doesn't necessarily match those times. We've got classes that start right at 7:30 for I think 3 days out of the week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think. where school starts essentially right at 7:30. And so, the students are arriving anywhere upwards of, a half hour before. And then to limit the restriction at the end of the day to 3:30, oftentimes we have students that are getting out of class close to 3:30, but that doesn't take into account the fact that there are certain clubs, there are sports activities after school. There's a bus stop on Middlefield Road on both sides of the intersection of Oak Grove. And that intersection is where children choose to cross the street from the bus stop. Menlo Atherton is a closed campus. However, we often get students that will take a little jaunt up Oak Grove to 7-Eleven or McDonald's around the corner and get food or snacks when they have an open class or open period, or even during lunch hour itself. We do patrol the area, for juveniles that aren't in school, for truancy. However, there's still a number of students that just, walk up to Middlefield or walk up Oak Grove to 7-Eleven and such. So the restrictions to just the beginning and the end of the day don't really match the hours that the school is opening and closing. And it doesn't take into account the fact that even during the entire day, there are children crossing at that intersection, high school kids, but children. Also, that intersection, if any of you are familiar with it, making a right turn there on a red traffic light can be a little sketchy. There is a limited line of vision in all directions from that intersection. My recommendation would be to put the signage back to Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's much easier for us to enforce, and it's easier for the motoring public to understand as well.
Thank you. I think that's good to hear the background. And that was kind of my comment, is they put the signs up and then the school immediately changed their hours. So it's kind of silly. I definitely support Sergeant Metzger's recommendation. However, after thinking a little bit longer and realizing at Encinal and Middlefield, there is no right turn on red, period. And I assume that was put in with the improvements for the bike lanes. That was put in together, and I very much agree that I go across Middlefield on Oak Grove a lot. That's not why it's not a pet peeve, but it is. The sight lines are very poor from people turning from Middlefield onto Oak Grove. They can't see cars coming, so I very often have to stop. But I do think that it should at least change to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I would support that, Monday through Friday. Any other questions or?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. What was the intended or desired effect of restricting the right turn on red during the school hours?
Primarily due to the kids that are crossing at that intersection. And that's because of the two bus stops that are located there. There's a bus stop on southbound Middlefield, just south of the intersection, just probably 20 feet south of the intersection. Right. And then there's also a bus stop for northbound, just north of the intersection. The other issue was that oftentimes when traffic would back up, cars traveling on Middlefield Road particularly would stop to keep the intersection open. That way they're not blocking the intersection, and then cars that have the red light on Oak Grove would go ahead and turn into the intersection and block the crosswalk. So you've got drivers that are trying to be good on Middlefield by not blocking the intersection, and then there were cars that seemed to try and take advantage of an open spot to make a right turn at a red light, just to be stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic ahead of them. And then the light cycles through, and they're stuck there the whole time, blocking the crosswalk that they've just entered into from the intersection. So it's primarily to the foot traffic in the area, but related also to bumper-to-bumper traffic and line of sight.
Yeah. If you're there when school is getting out or change over, it's just chaos there because the kids are, lights about to change and some kid just darts out on a skateboard, and so during hours it can be pretty dicey at that intersection.
Sure. I mean, I think though granted that there is a zero period if my recollection serves. And Dave, I think it could be whatever those days were, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. But how much traffic is the school producing during those hours? And if, how many students are we mitigating trying to get to and from, or how many students are walking? Because I think, isn't there also a bit of a traffic problem, or at least a parking problem on Oak Grove for folks that aren't parking in the student lot or wherever that is these days?
We really do police that pretty well. There's no stopping signs on Oak Grove in that area. We hardly ever get cars parking on Middlefield, but it seems to be Oak Grove, particularly west of the intersection of Middlefield,
Yeah.
that we sometimes get cars parking in there, but we police it really well. Rebecca is at cul-de-sac off of Oak Grove, just west of the intersection as well. That's posted for no parking. So there are a number of cars in that area, and it's the type of it could be the type of thing where just your regular morning commute is almost at its limit, and then you throw in the vehicular traffic from the high school, and it just puts it it just throws it into gridlock. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm all about the safety of the crosswalk, and those students are absolutely unpredictable. But I'm just now thinking if we put the sign in such a way that it's 7 to 7 or whatever it is, and it becomes adhered to, then it's either going to create additional traffic on the Oak Grove side, folks that are heading eastbound, that where some folks would trickle through on a right turn that are now not, assuming that they're following that rule. And then what kind of backup would that create? And then the sub piece of that is, so where would those folks go, right? How are we going to work around that? And I think it's going to put, if you're going right and you can only go, if you're turning right on Middlefield, you can only go to Ringwood, right? So that's going to push, I think, traffic up to the laterals, either stay on Laurel or Pine, and I guess there are a handful of other smaller streets that go through. But I mean, that's probably the desired effect, right?
Things have changed. It's been that way for 5 or 6 years, like I said. And in the last 5 or 6 years, you've got these apps, Waze and Google Maps that will tell people, hey, that it's going to be faster to make a quick right here and a quick left there. And if that's something that's an issue, it's always something that we've called in the past and had conversations with Waze and Google Maps as far as, hey, this is a street, you're throwing people up a street that just isn't made for this type of vehicle traffic, and they've been cooperative and changed it and disallowed it. So if that's something that becomes an issue, it's certainly something that we can contact these mobile apps for and have them make adjustments for it. But again, it's not. I don't think we're going to see any more backup at the intersections due to the limited right turn. I think it's just primarily going to get those few cars that are trying to whip out there and make that right turn during heavy traffic conditions that aren't going to see those high school kids that, I've had 2 of my own that will walk out, without looking. So I don't think restricting it more is going to cause any more of a backup. And if it does start throwing cars around some of the smaller streets in the area, I think we can deal with the mobile apps.
Also, as I understand, Menlo Park is reconfiguring that intersection in front of the high school at Ravenswood and Middlefield, because they don't like that unrestricted right turn because it's not good for pedestrians. Isn't that? I think I read about that in the paper that they're gonna.
I know that they've had plans to reconfigure that intersection. I haven't heard from them that they're ready to move forward with it yet. But I know that it was on their books to do that.
Because again, they think it's dangerous for the pedestrians because the right turn, you don't have to stop, was what I read. Anyway.
Sergeant Metzger, I just want to make sure I understand the current state of play. Is it right now that there's right turn on red's prohibited from 7 to 8:30 in the morning or something like that, and then also an afternoon rush? Is that
correct? 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. and then 1:30 to 3:30 p.m.
So right now there's 4 hours, and what we're considering now would make it 12 hours a day. So we would essentially add 8 hours of no right turn there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Can I also ask a general question I've often wondered about? I see these signs that try to be really precise, no right turn, 7:30 to 9:30. And I heard you say it's harder to enforce. And I've sort of always had that thought when I'm driving, like I'm never quite sure of the exact time. And Can you just give me does it cause problems trying to be too precise, or does it generally work? What's sort of your impression of those kinds of signs?
Yeah, I've always been a proponent of keep it simple, stupid. You know, and that works well for me in my own life. But you've got people. If it's 7 to 7, then it's 7 to 7, and then you get parents or commuters that are in or out of the area, and they're looking at their clock, and, you know, going, wait a minute, okay, what's the time? 9:30, and what time is it now? Is it okay? It's 9:35, so I'm okay, or it's 9:25. That's close enough. And so, like I said, you know, you got people, you know. Driving is ridiculous to me as it sounds. You've got drivers that'll pull up to the intersection and start doing math, and not, you know, not paying attention to what's going on around them. So I had felt, and I still feel that keeping it simple, 7 to 7, even if we wanted to make it 7 to 6 or 7 to 5, but just one set of numbers for the drivers.
Got it. Thanks.
I just think it's easy to justify, since especially, you know, Encinal and Middlefield, it's no right turn period ever on red.
Well, I'm actually not a member of the committee, but one thought I would have is we should think about whether we're aiming this at school kids or aiming it more broadly at traffic. Because if it's aimed at school kids, I could see going to 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. or something like that, because I assume there aren't that many school kids out at that point. But if the concern's more broad than 7 to 7 or something, or 24 hours, it makes more sense.
I think safety of the kids in the crosswalk would be the primary concern, and probably the most dynamic.
I almost think that, you know, when you get into the later hours of 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, and then every time a car comes up there, no matter what they want to do at that intersection, go straight, make a left turn or a right turn, they have to sit there and wait for the light to change. And if you get a car to pull up to the intersection and make a right turn without having to cycle the lights, then you don't have a northbound, southbound Middlefield Road car trying to beat the light, speeding up, slowing down. You know, we can just allow traffic to move freely on their own. And that was my thinking. I mean, you know, restricting it all the time makes it even easier to enforce. So, you know, it's just a matter of what we think is most appropriate.
And Carol, you're saying that Encinal turning right onto Middlefield is no right turn at all?
Yes. It's been
That was done with the recent improvements with the bikeway improvements, and part of that is because we put that new bikeway extension right up at the intersection, and we wanted to minimize cars turning into the cyclists.
And I will tell you, it is probably the most hated thing I've heard discussed at any Encinal parents at this point in time.
Okay.
They get it during the hours at schools coming in and out. It's kind of the same thing as MA, right? It's like when there's children around, you get to understand it. But when you're there at noon, you drop something off at school and you get out that light. And sometimes that light takes a while to change, and you're sitting there and you can't turn. There's no other traffic. So yeah, it's not one that's people in general I've seen would prefer to have a situation like an MA where when there's children around, it's enforced, but it's not when, you know, at night or, you know, during the middle of the day.
Well, do we have a
proposal? Before you do the other one, I'd add, and so what I've seen people do now is people say they to avoid that situation, they will literally go up to Laurel and go down Laurel to Oak Grove or Glenwood and turn left and then go right on Middlefield. So they'll go all the way out of the way to avoid that light, which is, you know, not what you'd ideally like, you know, the purpose of that no right turn to do. Driving traffic out of smaller streets.
Yes, that is a disadvantage.
Right, but driving it up to Laurel, I don't understand, because I'm faced with this when I go that direction. You know, I don't necessarily turn down Oak Grove to turn right on Middlefield to play the roulette at the light at Ringwood and Ravenswood, when I can just stay on Laurel to hit the light at Ravenswood, let it take me left, and then I've got the contested unlimited right turn at the bottom of that. So my hope is that those arteries would absorb, the frustration and the traffic on both Menlo as well as on Oak Grove.
I think it would be in our own best interest if Menlo Park doesn't change Ravenswood Middlefield to a restricted right turn. Because like Tom said, if we can get cars to shoot all the way up on El Camino and then cut down Ravenswood and make the right turn on Middlefield, that keeps them essentially completely out of our town.
Yeah.
Not that we want to make a problem on anybody else, but it's it's already the way that the intersections are set up now.
Right.
Agreed.
So do we want to propose a recommendation at this point, or what's the action item out of this conversation? If we're at that point.
I would be comfortable making a recommendation, but I would certainly could go with Sergeant Metzger's 7 to 7. I don't, but what do you think?
I won't say anything mean about Sergeant Metzger at this point. Privilege of knowing him a long time. I don't. I like the idea of keeping it simple. He and I share the need for that. I don't know that 7 o'clock p.m. is the right number, though. My mind is thinking about keeping the wily pedestrian students as safe as possible in that area, crosswalk or not. Because I mean, I've had a couple of those. I've been through that area a lot, and yeah, it can be pretty sporty when those guys are in session. But maybe it's a 5 o'clock or a 6 o'clock, something along those lines. I mean, I think a lot of the athletic stuff, and Dave, Sergeant Metzger, you can correct me here. I mean, most of that's happening over on the Ringwood side. That's where the lockers are and the fields and whatnot.
Right, most of it, yes. And if you want to have a discussion between 5 and 7, 5 o'clock would cover the school. 7 o'clock would cover the commute, and the benefit to 7 o'clock would be possibly restricting more traffic up Oak Grove and Middlefield in our area. So that's the decision you guys would have to make. The benefit to 7 is it would catch more of the commute that all the way up to the end of the commute. Where 5 o'clock would be more specific towards the high schools. I think maybe that was the initial intention.
Right. And the benefit to the commute is that if those drivers have figured out that it's more efficient time-wise to stay on Laurel or stay on El Camino and come down Ravenwood and make the right, then that's great for all of us. And might it also have a positive effect on the folks that are sort of itching into the intersection when it backs up at the Ravenswood Middlefield light? And someone does the right thing by holding short on the north side of the intersection, and one or two guys try to stick their nose in there. Has that been a problem that we want to address with this? Or I know it happens in the morning.
Personally, I don't want to be seen as restricting traffic on our streets, but I'm flexible on the hours of ending. It doesn't. I'm trying to make it a safer intersection. That would be my goal.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, you look like you're thinking about important.
No, I'm with you, simplicity, and I'm torn between 5 and 7. I'm not, in PM. Either one of those I think is acceptable to me, and I'm fine with doing either one and seeing how it goes and seeing what happens.
So that's an interesting comment I was thinking about. I mean, to see how it goes. What is the change that can be made, and is it easier, like pricing, right? Is it easier to come down from 7 to 5, or is it easier to go up from 5 to 7, or are we splitting hairs at this point? We should, Rochambeau or pick a coin, or put further intelligent thought into this and come up with that number and make that proposal in this conversation.
Yeah, because you're right. At one point, see how it goes. One of the problems is we're really not going to know the impact of this until we get back to normal high school, right? MA's partially going back next week, I think, and but it's still, even in the fall, we're most of the schools I'm hearing from are planning on being in hybrid mode in the fall anyway, at this point still. So it's going to be a long time before we have what I would consider to be normal traffic. Though I will say, I am shocked at the amount of traffic I've seen in the last 2 weeks building up again, not just around here, but on 101. I had to go down near the airport the other day. It was just stopped traffic going south at 3 o'clock. So we're seeing it come back, but I think the schools are going to be off for a while. They're in a hybrid mode, so we're not going to see, normal for a while.
Yeah, different political agenda item. But
Uh,
this should be in effect long after life returns to normal as we remember it.
Yeah.
Mike, from your experience, do you have any, your long history?
Yeah, no, I don't vote on this, obviously. B, this isn't something the council pushed. We're pushing this out, so I can't say the council's thought about it and has some, particular viewpoint on it. Just my inclination would be, for what it's worth, if our goal is to protect the school kids, I'd be inclined to give something like 5 o'clock if that protects the school kids. And I think that's where we are. When I asked it earlier, Tom was like, yeah, let's protect the school kids. That's our goal.
Yeah.
But you guys are the committee, so I will faithfully communicate your decisions and your indecision and your splits or whatever as best I can if push comes to shove with the council.
Well, why don't we make a recommendation from the 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and
Yeah.
I would support that 7 to
Yeah.
5.
Me too.
Okay, sounds like we're all in favor of that suggestion.
So we're going to push that forward to the city council for consideration. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, so we'll take the committee's recommendation and bring that forward to the council for consideration. And so that'll probably be in the April or May timeframe that'll happen.
Do we need to have this formalized in a motion or no? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it. So now we are on to old business, Neighborhood Traffic Management Action Plan.
Yeah, so this is just a brief update in terms of where we are. Appreciate the committee's feedback on the questions. I did get some additional information from Sriram with his recommendations on some language changes to the survey that we presented. So those will be incorporated. The consultant is working on updating the website, and per recommendations that came through the committee, we are going to try and put together a table of speed limits along with the 85th percentile information for various streets that would be available on the website for the residents to look at as they complete surveys and provide feedback on recommendations. The consultant's also working on updating the interactive map for receiving feedback, showing some recommendations. And in our conversations with them, I shared with them a recent project that was completed in Burlingame, wherein there were a variety of just striping changes, highlighting crosswalks, putting in, painted traffic circles with delineators in the middle. So for just localized local intersections to kind of weave traffic through a little bit to slow them down and make them conscious of things there. And it turns out that they actually designed those improvements. So they were very well familiar. So we're looking at some of those being integrated into some of the recommendations that will be coming forward. Our plan for the public outreach is, and this is an area where your feedback is appreciated. Last time we did 2 workshops for the public, and there were breakout rooms, et cetera, to go through things in different neighborhoods. We had about, I think, somewhere around 12 to 15 people attending each one. And so we can do that again. It's in our budget to have 2 workshops. or we can consolidate that to one, and that just looking at feedback from the committee members. I know Carol attended some, Sriram attended as well. And so we can either do one or two, and two would provide some flexibility for the residents to attend what's convenient to them. As with before, whatever we have will be recorded and posted on the website. And so the tentative dates that we're looking at are the 8th and 15th of April.
I think having two is beneficial.
Okay.
Gives people more opportunity, although I would question them having on the same night of the week, just because maybe some people have a commitment on a certain night.
Okay, well, that's a Thursday, and putting it outside of the, I'm going to say typically there are regular meetings on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so whether that's, committees such as this one on Tuesday, this is the second Tuesday. I know, for example, my rail committee is on a Tuesday. Council is on the first and third Wednesdays. So I can take a look and see with our consultant if we wanted to do maybe the 8th and the 14th, because the 14th is an off night for the council. And that would potentially give us a Thursday and a Wednesday. But right now we're working on the outreach materials, want to get the postcards pulled together, and we're coming up on, I think they're formatting right now the Athertonian, and it would be nice to get the article in there as well. Anybody else have any feedback on same day of the week versus having it split?
No, I think whatever is convenient to get it done would be more effective. I think the numbers were 20 some odd folks in one of them and around the same in the other one. So I don't think our reach is huge. Maybe that's why. I'd be curious to see the content that's going out to, kind of what the avenues are, how we're going to market this, which was part of the discussion last time.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've done what we typically will do is news flashes to get things out to folks that subscribe to the different things through the town. And we did do postcard mailings last time, and we intend to do that again. And if we can get something into the Athertonian, that gets to everybody's doorstep as well. There was an article previously in, I believe, the Almanac, advising folks of the previous workshops. One thing I don't know that we did that we probably should do this time is, in addition to just the regular subscribers, maybe hitting up the subscribers to the PD, because that may hit a few more eyeballs than the blast through the city clerk's office.
That's a good idea.
So, and if there's any other, I'm going to say one of the best ways actually is the word of mouth, getting people to tell their neighbors and others to participate. But I think we can also look at I'm going to say for I'll check with our city clerk about next door posting as well. The town can post something up on next door for those that subscribe to that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it all sounds like good options.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I think we should do all of that. Hey, Robert, can I ask what is the the purpose of these next round of meetings? Like, what's the work product? What do we expect to get out of these meetings?
Okay, so getting out of these meetings, it's a number of things. Number one is getting back to the residents in terms of this is what we heard from you, this is how we compiled it, and we've shared that information in different venues, but advising them that we've taken that input, we've digested it, and here are some potential options to consider with regards to mitigation measures to address some of those concerns, but also trying to get feedback on some of those prioritization questions that you have asked and others have asked to try and get, well, we know these are all issues. Where should we really spend our effort? And what are you concerned about? Where don't you want us to go? For lack of a better way to put that. So those were shared in the questions that we had before, fine tuning with some of the language recommendations that we've received. But we also are going to be sharing information as to pros and cons of some of the measures. And if somebody on their street wants to have, I'll use the example of a speed bump. If they want a speed bump, that's great. But we do want them to advise us, well, would you be willing to have it in front of your house? Right? And so it's great that you say that you want it, but you don't want it in front of your place or within 3 houses of you. If everybody does that, then it's not going to happen. So it's really trying to get, some of that granular feedback as well as some of the big picture feedback.
That's great. And I know the committee members are aware of this, but I'll just remind you, the prioritization is important for a number of reasons, but one of them is just, it takes so dang long for us to fund and design and build anything that something that's not top priority may not get done for quite a while.
No.
Okay, so this was just an update item. And so I'm happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, we can move on to the traffic unit reports.
Okay.
And on the reports, Carol, if it's okay with you, like we've done in the past, happy to go have Sergeant Messer go through detail of each report. If there's not any questions, I would make some overarching comments about the last 2 months of our activity.
Any questions, committee members? I didn't have any looking through.
Okay. So just with that, I think it's important to remind what our traffic unit consists of right now. We have 2 full-time motorcycle officers, and we have a new reserve motorcycle officer. He's a retired sergeant from San Jose. If you know Officer TJ Boyle, he's stepping away from the motorcycle. He's going to stay with us, luckily, and remain in a car. Council was very supportive and recently approved making Sergeant Metzger our motor sergeant. And thanks to a very generous resident, purchased us an additional 4th motorcycle. The same resident has purchased vehicles for us before and motorcycles as well.
Wow.
And then also too, just the traffic unit, we're all part of the traffic unit. When our patrol officers aren't on calls, they know the expectation for all of us is to be out there doing active traffic enforcement, making sure that we're visible. The outputs that they do lead to our outcomes and their targeted goals and objectives. Outcomes being, reduced collisions, reduced injuries, saving lives. Our DUI activity over the last 10 weeks has really picked up. I don't know if it's in for any more particular reason other than having a group maybe that's gelling on night shift now. Some of our younger officers, when they come to us, they start on days, and then we have to move them to nights. But we've had over 10 DUI arrests in the last 10 weeks, which is really good for us. And as you can imagine, every one of those arrests has a real potential to be saving a life or very serious injury. So I'm really proud of that output. And then throughout the last year, thanks to our favorite friend, COVID, when it first started, we were all very muzzled, very protective in our activity. Of course, the officers were frustrated. And as things have gotten kind of back to normal over the last few months, and I've always said, do what you think that you do that is comfortable in the traffic stops that you're making and be safe. with that, they want to get out there and work. They're keeping safe, but they're out there making a lot of stops, which is great. And it's not about tickets at all. And I emphasize that all the time. It's about education. It's about enforcement if you need it. And also too, the traffic stop is one of the best ways for us to get in that car, see who's driving, who's in our town, do you have warrants, do you have guns? And these traffic stops are revealing that. And also too, with the dramatic success of our flock program in the last 10 to 12 weeks, a lot of high activity. The officers are handling it very well, staying safe. And then we hope to, with again, some donations I just found out today, we have an anonymous donor that will be funding 10 additional flock cameras with council approval to complete what we're calling our flock fence around town. I recently had a really good community meeting with the Lloyden Park residents in response to the crime that occurred there. They asked some very good questions, and they are funding 3 additional flock cameras to protect the Lloyden Park community. So we are excited about that as well.
Also, Chief, a reminder that last Wednesday we started doing some pedestrian crosswalk enforcement, specialized enforcement, which will be occurring along the El Camino corridor. We did El Camino and Almondral, the traffic signal there last Wednesday. Tomorrow we were going to do Middlefield at Watkins, but I went ahead and called it off the day before last minute because it looks like we're going to have a bit of rain in the morning. I didn't want people out there trying to cross the roadway in the rain and cause another collision. I want to make it worse. But so over the next 4, possibly 5 weeks, primarily our traffic enforcement team as well as patrol officers will join us out there and doing some specialized crosswalk enforcement.
Thanks for reminding me of that, David. This is in response to a car pedestrian collision we had on ECR Almondral. One of our pregnant residents was crossing. Vehicle initially stopped, I believe, and then went forward and hit her. Could have had a very tragic result for the fetus. Luckily, she's fine. Some of you may see me walking around in my horribly loud shirts and constantly going across the crosswalks, and I see it myself on ECR. So we felt it was important. Go out there, do some enforcement, and really do some education. There's still some confusion about how the hawk signals work, but we're trying to bring attention to this matter and getting some media attention as well.
That's great.
And Chief, it looked like all the accidents, I'm sorry, but all the accidents are on either Middlefield or El Camino for those 2 months. Is that right?
Primarily, and those are our 2 primary spots, as you can imagine. It's not uncommon for us to get complaints, and David knows this, speeding traffic and collisions on Tuscaloosa and Stockbridge, and I know, Tom, you live on Stockbridge. Mm-hmm. And we've done these speed studies, and it's their perception, but when we go back out and meet with them, it's a great opportunity to do a speed study. We have the collision stats at our fingerprints, and luckily, those routes don't really see much activity. That said, though, it's not uncommon during community meetings that, I live on Tuscaloosa for years. I've never seen a police officer. That's a very common response. It doesn't mean that we're not out there, because we do track, and I get back to residents of all the contacts we've had on those roads. But it is a reminder to our officers, it's very easy to stay on ECR and Middlefield all day long, but we got to get back in these back streets. We need to have, potential burglary suspects seeing us out and about. And so whenever we can, we try to be everywhere. We just can't. But I can tell you, the group is doing really well. We've hired some really good people. We've made some great promotions to sergeant. I have a great commander. There's really a positive, energetic culture going on right now that there wasn't before. But it's exciting to see, and I'm proud of the work that they're all doing.
Chief, if the committee's interested, I at least would find it interesting to get some kind of briefing from you on concentration issues, meaning, should we be focusing on El Camino and Middlefield? Is that really where we're seeing all these accidents and speeding? Just to put some meat on the bones of that conversation you started to have. I think that's really interesting to think about a little.
No, and like I said, that's something that we discussed at briefing, because like I said, it's easy to stay on ECR and Middlefield. There's a lot of activity, a lot of speed, and of course, making the best of your day and telling the officers, not just the traffic unit, but all of us, myself included, and the commander, get out in the back streets, pull over and talk to people that are walking. They love talking to us. You learn some great stuff when you're out there talking to them. And so we do, constantly emphasizing to get out in these back streets and other areas for visibility and deterrence.
Could we get training, or I don't know what the right word is, an overview of maybe a year's worth of here's where the accidents are and here's where the speeding is. I don't want to make work for you, but if you could show what El Camino looked like and Middlefield looked like versus, Watkins or Stockbridge or whatever.
No, I can send out an email. I have, luckily I have all of that, thanks to Sergeant Kokler and to David. We keep really good stats, and believe me, it comes in handy when you get a lot of these traffic complaints, and some people are very irate. And when you have them come in, when we used to be able to, and sit down with them and you show them the statistics and you show them the enforcement, they walk away knowing that, I'm glad you guys have that. I'm glad you guys are out there. And that black box is a great tool as well when we respond to their complaints.
So, emails are great. I at least would love to have a 5 or 10 minute conversation about it. Just hear it from the horse's mouth and maybe answer some questions. We could maybe put that on the agenda at some time for a future meeting.
Sure, we can do it at the next meeting. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael, what street do you live on?
Ashfield. Nobody speeds here because
no.
Crash.
Right. Yeah.
There's a big fence at the end of it right now. There.
Yeah, and a train track if you get through that.
Yeah.
Okay, I asked because my kitchen front's on Stockbridge, and seems like everyone's got a modified muffler or something these days, and we've got the Ferrari dealership up the street, and it looks like we've curved that quite a bit. But you'll hear these things. I mean, look, you turn on a Stockbridge from either direction, and it's a beautiful quarter-mile track all the way to Austin, and I get it. So with a lot of these sort of exhaust things going on, I asked the chief about it, and he offered the black box, came out, did the survey, and it was fascinating, the data. Not that I don't hear these occasional fast cars, but the quantity of them is a lot less than I thought. And the quantity relative to the rest of traffic was a whole lot different. So I got to think, Chief, that's an amazing teaching tool for us residents.
So hey, Tom, when you say that, what was it, like 1 car an hour that was going super fast, or 1 car out of 100, or what was your takeaway?
It, I don't have the count. I don't hear the other cars, or, I don't keep track of kind of the rest of it. It's just I'm in the front of the house, or I'm doing something outside, and you hear that exhaust wind up, or the kid with the BMW 7 Series, it keeps trying to figure out how to spin the rear tires. Poor guy. It comes and goes, but it's just to look at the rest of the data and look at how many cars are going past and what the average speed is at the various times of the days across the 4 or 5 days it was there, was really an interesting data set to think that my view of Stockbridge when those cars are speeding by is a much smaller percentage than the rest of the traffic that's going east and west up past my house.
Another good data point too is when you do look at the official, the rubber hose across the road and the official traffic studies that Robert O helps us out with, they are really in line with the black box. So I have a lot of confidence in that black box, because we can't just do speed studies, official ones. It's exhaustive and it's expensive, but that black box is very helpful.
Yeah. Shifting gears just slightly, I would offer Stockbridge Crosswalk as well as Selby Lane Crosswalk for those studies, those intensive studies.
Yes. And then one last thing that we have last couple of years, and it ties in with, traffic safety. We partnered with the Highway Patrol to come into town. We typically do it spring. We're scheduling the spring one now, and then fall with their commercial vehicle enforcement officers. They love coming into our town and getting out from where they're up on the 101 or whatever, and come in and take a hard look at the amount of equipment and the type of equipment that's moving through our town. I think the year before last, it was kind of surprising the number of equipment violations they were finding, putting some vehicles out of service. So that is a point I wanted to make, that we're partnering with the Highway Patrol. We don't have the capability to do that. It's a really expertise area, but they will come out. And when they do those, I'll push those reports out to you so you can see the aftermath.
That'd be great. And would that be, so Middlefield has the turnout still, right?
Yeah, they don't really use that. They actually go back into where all these construction sites and where all these heavy vehicles are coming, with all the different people around, because they're checking brakes, they're checking exhaust, they're checking equipment, insurance, licensed drivers, and it's surprising what you find.
And they're going into the construction sites and seeing them come and go, or
yeah, they're working around the construction sites, like on Tuscaloosa or on Stockbridge. And they have the ability, they have the authority and the ability to pull the truck over and do an inspection.
Fantastic. That's great.
Hey, Tom, back to your comment about the speed of people. I think what we always found out in all the data, Mike, was that the average speed is lower than you think it is. And it's just, you get the occasional outlier who's some idiot going 50 miles an hour in a 30 zone or something, right? And it reminded me when we helped Steve out, we did an interview for sergeants, and one of the officers on traffic, I can't remember who it was specifically, but he was talking about catching people going over 100 miles an hour on El Camino in Atherton. It's just like
It happens. It happens. And before I forget
That's
who
right when I'm trying to cross the street.
that even my bright green shirts not going to help me with that.
No.
Again, if you haven't done it, the invitation is always open to come out and ride with our officers day or night. Even if you've done it once, you want to do it again. I think you find the officers really enjoy it. They like to explain what they're doing, and I think it's a great learning opportunity for you all in your roles on the committee.
God,
once I get my second vaccine, I'll take you up on it.
All right.
You're one up on me, Joe. Hey,
Yeah.
Chief, I'll let you know, I was in Menlo Park and I saw an officer on a bicycle actually do a traffic stop, pull up behind a car and wave him over. Chased him down for about a block and a half too. I thought it was really great to watch.
Yeah, they do that. It's a skill.
Yeah.
There you go, Sergeant Metro.
One question on the February traffic report. There was one pretty significant accident there. It looked like a broadside at Selby and El Camino.
Yes.
Excessive speed. Do you happen to know the specifics on that?
David, you were there. I'll let you take that one.
So it was a vehicle traveling eastbound on Selby towards El Camino, like from Selby Lane School, was going to make a left turn onto northbound El Camino towards Redwood City. There was a motorcyclist that was traveling southbound on El Camino, approaching Selby from like Oakwood. The motorcyclist, we have witness statements, and even the motorcyclist himself was indicating speeds of 60 plus miles per hour. So as the vehicle making the left turn onto El Camino from Selby pulled out in front of the motorcycle was unable to stop, slow, or turn to avoid colliding into this vehicle. Now, there was a motorcyclist and a passenger. The report was that the passenger's helmet came off of her head immediately upon impact with the vehicle, and she took a pretty good whack to her noggin on the pavement. Both were transported to Stanford trauma. However, amazingly enough, both of them suffered moderate injuries, a broken clavicle, some broken ribs, punctured lung, but nothing that's going to be permanent. I think that they're very lucky to have escaped with a minimal amount of injuries. Now, typically speaking, that vehicle making the left turn, pulling out in front of that motorcyclist would have the right of way, and that vehicle would need to yield. However, once a vehicle exceeds about 17 miles an hour over this posted speed limit, then the liability transfers from the vehicle making the left turn to the other vehicle that's speeding. And again, even the motorcyclist's statement was that he was about 60 miles an hour. He was riding with a buddy on another motorcycle. He said, I was going 50 and he was pulling away from me. So we put the liability on that motorcyclist. When cars pull up to intersections and they look to clear the intersection, they look for vehicles, they look far enough back for vehicles traveling at or about the speed limit, given the vehicle from time to time is going 50. But normally you don't look for far enough down the roadway for a vehicle that would be traveling 60 that's going to be at the intersections, the same vehicle that was a lot closer traveling 35 miles an hour. So if you're kind of scratching your head going, wasn't the other guy at fault? Well, typically yes, but not in this particular situation.
And if the motorcycle admitted he was going 60, he was probably going 70.
Right, yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the comments I have.
Okay, that is staff reports and future agenda items. Does anybody have something they would like to add to the agenda for the next time?
But I think Mike added his request that the chief's going to provide some of that data on collision. So that
Yeah.
would be on. Other than that,
Okay.
nothing for me.
Public comments again? We don't have anybody else here. Okay. Well, our next meeting date is scheduled for May 11th. And I guess we can adjourn the meeting.
Everybody have a good night.
Carol,
Carol,
thanks
you
for,
wielded power so effectively.
thank you for doing that, Carol.
Sure. Because I told Jennifer, reluctant, but sure.
Well
All
done.
right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you
Have a
all.
good evening.
Everyone. Good night.
Right.